One thing that I love about what you're saying there, bit of a back spiel, like it's so difficult to have political discussions these days. And I think that one of the reasons why it's so difficult is because not a lot of people are willing to continue asking questions like you might ask as a historian or as a diplomat. They're not willing to ask more and more questions to find out more information that would be critical to the overall solution. People are basically looking at these political divides and these political situations going on through a very low resolution lens, when it's actually a very high resolution picture. And something that you said, talking about the idea of America is going after business interests, and something that I often tell people is that you can't necessarily compare different countries to each other because the countries might not be playing the same games. Like when it comes to, say, healthcare for the citizens, America might be losing that game, right? Australia is doing really well. I know that because my dad recently had somewhat of a complication, immediately into hospital, best care possible, doesn't have to pay a cent for it apart from some small taxes. But America's game that they're playing, they're really good at, is innovation, business. It's a completely different game to the one that we might play in Australia. And what you've been talking about all through this is that diplomacy is the art of looking at all of the different angles of culture and business and international relations and trade, and all of that. Diplomacy takes in everything. And it can teach us how to have better conversations about these big issues, right?
Absolutely. Look, just finally here, it just occurred to me that one of the things we did terribly wrong about Vietnam or diplomacy there was, and I'm here quoting the great Asian China scholar John Fairbank, it said that America could only have failed in Vietnam because it didn't understand Buddhism, rice culture, or village mentality. Yeah. And because we didn't know how things worked at the hamlet level, and we didn't know these other things, that we were doomed to failure. So when we're talking about recreating and pacifying the hamlets over there, he said, we did it all wrong, and we were doomed to failure. And then he says, at the end of the Vietnam War, in the New York Review of Books, he says, we were culturally blind. Our diplomacy was culturally blind. We did not know. It's just, to this day, we don't know what we don't know. No one learned anything. And we're going to repeat it again. So when we get involved in these, and this other thing about this low resolution, one thing you learn about when you start studying Asian cultures and Buddhism and all the rest of it, there are multiple truths. Today, everyone in America thinks there's one truth, and that if you don't agree with me, get the hell out of the room, or you get into a shouting match, or someone shoots each other because they can't. They think it's a debate. They think everything is a debate, and there's only one answer. It turns out that there may be multiple answers on that page that we could all live with. But the idea that there's only one way that this thing has to work out is suicidal. And this is where I think a lot of our problem in Washington is. And the president has ignored, the State Department through the president has ignored filling about 25 or 30% of the senior positions. There are acting people in place who, by the way, aren't getting paid for it. And we've lost a lot of really bright people who studied history and diplomacy and even literature. I mean, Harvard has been left out of this administration. The Brookings Institution's been left out of this. We got the great thought platforms in America are not part of the Trump administration. He's replaced them with other people from maybe very narrow business interests, et cetera. And so we don't have the great ideas, or they're not flowing through. And if you don't have these people who have been exposed to these different kind of histories and ways of thinking, and our view is going to become more and more myopic instead of larger. But anyway, to get back to Fairbank's thing, without history and the study of diplomatic history, we are condemned to cultural blindness. Now, we can get away with this once in a while, but once it gets to the nuclear level, you're in a whole new game, okay? It's only a small miracle we haven't had a nuclear exchange in 75 years. But I'm saying that if there is a small exchange, when I say small, 15, 20, nuclear weapons. It will change the sky, the temperature, the weather, the crops, and everything else. I mean, we are condemned to nuclear winters, Carl Sagan used to say. But it's this cultural blindness. And I think the study of diplomacy, the study of human nature, the study of how other people see the world is crucial to how we survive. And without it, we don't survive. And to tell you the truth, we don't deserve to survive if we're going to just keep putting our heads in the sand. I mean, there are answers out there, but we got to look for them. And this low resolution, you make a very good point. People think it's a debate. If you don't agree with me, you hit the highway. Well, that's not how the real world works. The real world is far more complicated and I think far more nuanced than that.